I'm Danny, that witch next door, and you're listening to That Witch Podcast. Well. Hello, my wonderful neighbor. Hello, my friend. Welcome to another episode of That Witch Podcast. I'm Danny. I'm that witch next door, and I will be your host, your guide, your mentor, and instructor in all things magic, witchcraft, astrology, and witchy business. And welcome back to another Tuesday episode, my friends. If this is the first time that you've been here, hello and 1,000 welcomes. This is a very friendly and welcoming place, and I'm so happy that you found our wonderfully magical little neighborhood here. If this is not your first time and you are a regular listener of the episode, or you have started listening recently, welcome back. I am so incredibly grateful for your time and that you continue to return. So thank you very much for being here. I'm really excited in particular for today's episode because it's kind of kicking off some content and messaging and more discussion that we're going to be having more and more around here. You know, I really identify as an instructor and mentor for aspiring astrologers, students of witchcraft, and anyone interested in really truly utilizing those to grow and develop their own life and their own career and livelihood in whatever way that means for each person. I really am not the person to book a reading with. I don't really give traditional birth chart readings anymore. I don't really offer professional tarot readings anymore. These will always hold such a special time and place and memory in my heart, and this is my soul mission, and these are my soul people. And so many of you, most of you really, that listen to this show are exactly those people that I described. You're really here because you're not just interested in learning about astrology from a horoscope standpoint, right? I mean, we go over that on Moon Day, but I always position our astrological and witchy and spiritual content to be utilized by the individual, for the individual, and the greater good. I really never position myself as the end-all be-all guru and guide that you go to seek some special message from your ancestors or your guides. I would prefer, and what I really specialize in doing is helping you access that channel for yourself. That's what I want to help you do. That's what I can do really well. And that's where I am the most confident, is in turning people right back to their own intuition and helping them strengthen that relationship. Well, all of this is to say that if we're going to use astrology and witchcraft and magic in our real lives, right? My motto, real magic for real life. Well, this is one of those areas that we're definitely talking about real ass life, because we are going to have a conversation about money today. And this is not going to be our last conversation about money around here. It is something I want to start talking about more. And a big reason for this is because I have a lot of personal experience in this realm, specifically in going through both self-imposed and externally imposed financial trauma, and growing and learning and creating practices to get out of that place. I have focused so much of my personal time and energy, and really my business's time and energy too, on doing my financial shadow work, bringing light and illumination to my financial wounds and triggers, and really offering myself the time and space to heal my financial energy channel and to actually access and tap into what is abundance mindset for me, because it is different for each of us. Abundance and prosperity and wealth, it means something different to each of us. It's very unique to each of us. And yet it is a collectively accessible energy channel and mindset. But there are so many challenges and blockages keeping most of us from, well, not only from accessing it, but from creating that time and space to offer ourselves healing and nurturing for our own financial trauma and wounds. And so I want to take it upon myself to start this conversation with everybody. I believe it was last year, probably around this time, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I should have gone back and looked. But about a year ago, we did a couple of episodes on the divine energy exchange. Maybe it was this year. Holy moly, 2022 has felt like, let's do the time warp again. But seriously, it's been crazy. So anywhere from a little over to a little less than a year ago, we did a couple episodes on the divine energy exchange. And I am going to reboot this in some kind of way. I know that and I feel called to that, but I haven't solidified exactly what that is yet. So I'll either be like re-releasing those or just featuring them in the email newsletter, something like that. But I'll be reintroducing and reconnecting you to the Divine Energy Exchange episodes because they are such an important part of this entire conversation. But today, what I want to do is I want to start the conversation about money magic and abundance rituals and why they're not working. We are going to get a little blunt today. So before we hop into the episode for today, let's go ahead and do our little That Witch School bulletin update. Okay, so That Witch School is up to a lot of fun. Last week, we got up to some tarot goodness. We had our shadow work support group call. I was so excited to be able to announce to everybody that Sierra and I, the host of our shadow work support group calls, Sierra Bowes of Shadows and Grimoires. I've mentioned her really recently on the show, but if you haven't heard, make sure you go check out Sierra. She'll be tagged in the show notes below. Sierra and I are now offering the shadow work support group calls weekly. And this is huge. This is a really amazing container. And it is just blossoming exponentially with every single call. So if you haven't heard of it before, essentially this is a witchy therapy support group. Sierra is an educated, and licensed, ordained quantum therapist. And she also is a spiritual mentor. She's an independent researcher. And she holds the most amazing, safe, and inclusive space for everyone during each of these calls. And we open up the calls by casting a protective and connecting circle with each other. Everyone shares totally open and freely whatever they're experiencing at that time. These calls are not recorded, so they are available only to full-time students. And this is just to promote as much safety of vulnerability and privacy for everyone that joins these calls as possible. And We have lots of amazing people join every single week and hold such incredible supportive energy and magic for each other. We all pull a collective card at the end. Each of us well, if not everyone, most of us pull a card at the very end. This is a little practice that actually kind of birthed organically in the group, which was really beautiful. And we end up with these beautiful collective readings at the very end, created from the different cards that everyone pulled from their own deck. It's really, really beautiful. And then we safely close out the circle and end the call with each other. So we're now offering these calls every week. They are an hour long. We are going to be hosting them in a rotation at staggering times, regularly every month, so that there is some consistency and regulation, but so that we're also really opening this opportunity to as many schedules and time zones as possible. So if you are not already a part of this container, the Shadow Work support group alone is more than worth the cost of the full-time student enrollment package. And on top of that, the full-time student package is an all access pass to that witch school. So you get absolutely all of the benefits and perks within the membership by being on that tier. And it's just, that support group, I swear, is absolutely priceless. So can't wait to see everybody weekly. Do not hesitate to reach out to me or Sierra if you ever have questions on these calls. Now, last week, like I mentioned, we started having some tarot fun. I was so excited to introduce all of you more officially to my lovely client and friend, Mary Sue, who is, of course, an adult spicy model, as well as a tarot reader. And possibly more in the future, I will just say, as her mentor. I'm just giving you praise and a shout out right now, Mary Sue. But I know that you are going to be offering more in this realm in the coming future anyways. So I was really, really excited to offer Mary Sue a spot in that witch school to teach a guest workshop for all of us on the art of reading tarot for others. And this was really beneficial because we have so many folks inside of that witch school that are reading tarot regularly, or they just started and they're really feeling called, or they've been kind of practicing reading for other people. But this was really, really extra beneficial for anyone that's been kind of feeling the call to start offering readings professionally. And I think that Mary Sue's workshop gave some really beneficial boundaries and perspective to keep in mind. There was so much in there that went way, way, way more in depth than what she and I were able to get into on our podcast episode. And I think really set a lot of people up for some success in now making that venture and reading tarot for other people outside of themselves, or maybe even outside of their personal circle. So that was amazing. That replay of that workshop is available to both part-time students and full-time students. So that is available right now if you haven't already caught that, or if you would like to join. And then all members in that witch school, including our next door neighbors and above, they all received our cute little top 10 tarot tips that Mary Sue and I came up with as this really handy reference guide that you could download and keep with you to embark on your tarot journey, whether you're just now starting out or whether your tarot practice needs some of these reminders to help you kind of combat maybe some imposter syndrome you've been having or some blockages that you've been experiencing. I think it's really, really helpful. A really handy little reference. So everyone in that witch school got access to that. And then this week, with all of this money goodness that we're talking about, I was so excited for the bonus content this week for that witch school. So everyone this week, next door neighbors, part-time students, full-time students, get access to a really dope bonus episode today. I'm not gonna lie, it's a really good one. I am going into money shadow work. So, we're going to talk a little bit about this today on the episode, but not nearly as in depth as I wanted to go. So, I am dropping a little bonus episode on the specifics of money shadow work, as well as kind of the bones of a good, solid money shadow work ritual to get you started and get you inspired, as well as a very handy checklist for creating a foundation for a personal budget, which again, we're going to get into a little bit more as we get into our episode for today. So now it is time for our neighbor highlight. I've been having so much fun coming up with these little neighbor highlights, and I just totally intuitively let the names or name of the neighbor kind of come through organically and intuitively to me. And I'm so excited this week to give a warm, wonderful shout out and neighbor highlight to our very own neighbor and full-time student, Nick Good. So Nick, I just wanted to shine the light on you a little bit because you are one of our newer members this year, but you have become such an active and welcoming, kind and engaging person inside of our community on Mighty Networks. And I know that I am not alone in being so grateful for your energy that you bring to our community. So you deserve this shout out. You're such an awesome person. Thank you for being you and bringing your energy to our space. We just all appreciate and love you so, so much. And now, everybody, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. And let's start talking about why your money magic is not working. By the way, do you guys like the little segment music sound effects that we added? I had the idea for it when I wanted to start doing segments on here, and I was so excited to bring it to Jared, my husband, because he's such a sound engineer whiz. And I know that's when he really has fun, is doing creative projects like that. And I was like, will you help me create like a custom little transition sound to go in between segments? So I'm sure that they'll kind of grow and morph over time as the show grows. But for now, I just think it's, I think it's all magic and witchy and adorable. Little cauldron bubble. All right, everybody. So your money magic, I'm not trying to be harsh about it not working, but I'm trying to help you troubleshoot, because in my experience, and tell me if you relate to this, in my experience as a witch, as an energy practitioner, as like a conscious practicer of manifestation, okay? I find that we get this abundance magic, prosperity spells, money spells. I feel like we get this stuff kind of shoved and thrown at us as a band-aid, cure-all, fix-all solution. And people are like, oh, it's because you're not doing your money spells. Oh, it's because you're not doing your abundance magic. Oh, it's because you need abundance mindset. Just think abundance. Just think abundance. And I don't know about you, my friend, but for years and years, I was like, man, this doesn't work for me. Like, this is not working. It's not helping my finances in any way. I don't feel any closer to abundance mindset or even understanding what the fuck that actually means for myself. Or what it even means for anybody. I felt so disconnected from it. And yet I was surrounded by this suggestion. Oh, just do your money rituals here. And you know what I was a big, big fan of? And again, it just never worked. Were money affirmations. Tell me if you relate to that. Someone would drop some like slamming abundance or prosperity affirmation on Instagram. And I was like, that's the one. And I'd make it my wallpaper on my phone screen. I'd say it in every single money ritual I did. And yet, what was happening around me? My magic worked. I mean, at this point, I'd been practicing, again, purposefully manifesting for a long time. I'm a believer. I've proven to myself my energetics are in sync and in alignment, it's working for me. And this area is not working for me. Money was, I don't even know where to begin with that. You know, most of you have probably already heard my episodes with my husband, Jared. They were earlier this year. We did a 2-parter. I'm going to link those in the show notes below for you if you want to listen to them or listen to them again. But, you know, we talked a lot about mine and his joint journey and everything that we've been through. So I really encourage you to listen to that. A lot of people, after they listen to those episodes, reach out to me and say how much they appreciate us just being so honest about our financial hardship, because we all experience it, and it just makes everyone feel seen and like there is light at the end of the tunnel, because there is. I want to get a little bit more into my personal relationship with money today, and kind of leading into that episode that I did with Jared. You really got to go back to when you were a kid. And money when I was a kid was interesting the way it was taught to me. I definitely grew up in a very nice area and a good house. And granted, yes, I'm part of the generation that my parents probably got a pretty slamming deal on that house. I can't remember how much they paid for it, but I remember when I was an adult, my mom told me, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? It's impossible. That wouldn't get you anything now. Nothing, not even, you couldn't even buy an apartment for that much. But, I lived in a nice house, nice area. Parents both worked full time, so a lot of privilege, plenty of blessings, head start. And that was something that was very ingrained in me from a young age. You have more than other people. In a lot of ways, I think it was really important that my parents instilled this into me, but it was never taught to me like what to do with that. And it took me until I was an adult to figure it out. But that's just because, and I love my mom and dad, but they are, they are not necessarily where I learned and developed my good financial habits from. And so I've learned that a lot of the reason I wasn't taught what to do with that mindset and that just state of being is because my parents didn't know what to do with it. And keep in mind, a big reason they didn't know what to do with it is because both of them came from poverty, extreme poverty. So by the time they were adults and bought a house and had money, they were some of the first people in their families to do this. And so they certainly had no idea how to manage finances by any means. And what does this result in? Quite honestly, no matter who your parents are, no matter where you come from, no matter where you grew up, you have some kind of financial trauma. It just looks totally and fucking completely different across the spectrum. But I need you to understand this. Even the people with the most money in this world, you can hate them all you want. I don't care what you want to do with your time and your energy and your opinions. You can hate people for being rich. I don't care. But I promise you, this is just a law of nature. They still they have and will continue experiencing financial trauma. It happens to all of us. No amount of money combats it, period. Which is exactly why the solution needs to stop being a dollar amount. It needs to stop being some monetized amount. The solution needs to be how we view and manage money and finances. No matter how much you have, no matter how much you used to have, no matter how much you're gonna have, no matter how much people you know have, any of it. You need to know how to manage your finances. No amount of money will fix that problem. I need you to integrate that. Because the biggest first blockage that I'm addressing right now, the first thing that knocks everybody off of this wagon is I need X amount of money in order to be okay with my money. Now, there are, like, mathematically, there are issues in your finances that you can find where it's like, no, this is a problem. I don't make enough here. This costs this much. We need to remedy that. That's different. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about overall quality of life and overall general quality of financial state of being. Because this is where people fall off the wagon and why they block themselves. They say X amount of dollars will take their financial stress away. And I fucking promise you, that's not true. That's not true. The reason is because you cannot deny your financial and money shadows, just like you can't deny them in any other case, okay? Anybody that's skimping out on and just adding more and more and more shadows to the closet, and they're just skipping out on doing their shadow work, it is going to consume them alive. Like that, it is going to consume them in some way, shape, or form. You cannot deny acknowledgement and healing of those wounds if you want to seek that homeostasis and state of peace in your finances and in your overall life. Okay. You cannot skip the shadow work part. So for me, a lot of my financial wounds are around emotional and frivolous spending. So because my parents had money as adults that they couldn't have even dreamed of it when they were kids, that amount of money. They had no idea what to do with it. And they were of that same very common mindset that a certain dollar amount makes everything okay. And that, well, as long as we're making this amount of money, we can never go wrong. It will always be okay. And that's not the case, especially when we get into frivolous and emotional spending. When I first got my first paying job when I was a teenager and I started getting a paycheck, and pretty much all paychecks in my 20s, pretty much were a paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. So I need you to understand the person you're talking to. Because I really need you to understand the amount of progress for yourself that is possible. And it might seem so fucking impossible because the way that I am and the way I manage my money now is something I never could have fucking dreamed of 10 years ago. Shit, 5, 6 years ago, I couldn't have. So, I want you to, I'm painting the picture. I'm painting the scene for you. So I am paycheck to paycheck. That means I use my debit card. Thank God it took me so long to get my first credit card. The way I use my debit card for like, I don't know, 12 years is when it stops letting me charge something, the money runs out. And then you wait till the next paycheck. I mean, it was horrible. I was technically paying my rent. I always had a roommate, so I was always able to like split my utility bills and split rent. I was always pretty blessed, at least back then, to find a relatively affordable place. So I'll definitely speak my gratitude for that. But I mean, I just spent and spent. And most of what I spent money on was alcohol and drugs and food. And I'm just going to be super blunt about that. That was my lifestyle, okay? That was all I spent all of my money on. I would do big giant shopping sprees a couple times a year, but that's not really what my bag was. Like that's just how often and how much money I was spending on alcohol and drugs and food. And oh my God, when I think back now about how I used to spend money, it is hard not to go into an actual anxiety attack just thinking about somebody spending money that way, using their debit card that way. Well, basically I never look at the balance because I was terrified. I was always scared of my bank account. I was always afraid to look at it. And so saving was not even a tiny remote island in the distance. It was a non-existent concept. Like, I really want you to understand, because so often I find, and I found this in my journey, I would try to learn from some great financial advisor or whatever, and most of them had pretty much always been good with their money. Almost everyone that I had found back then, in the early 2010s and mid 2010s, which is when I started, that was probably some of the first times I started giving a shit and sort of trying to figure out how to manage my finances. I was finding just these big named famous people like Dave Ramsey. But I found that a lot of people didn't really have these huge horror stories, and they certainly didn't have them as recent as I had been experiencing. And so, when I get into my late 20s, and essentially this is the gap of time that those episodes with my husband fill in for all of you, and all of that shit happened, which is just a string of crazy external events. I wanted to put in perspective for all of you, like, the kind of person that those events struck. Those kinds of traumatic financial events struck a person who had no idea what the fuck she was doing. And on top of that, she had just gotten the first credit card she had ever had in her life. So holy shit, you can imagine how that unfolded over the next several years. So I want you to know that this is so in your realm of potential and possibilities. No matter where your money is right now, and I can feel some of you, at least one of you right now, I can feel that I'm talking pretty directly to, that this has been an extreme source of your anxiety and your stress, babes. I can really feel you right now. I want you to know that it's not too late. The world's not crashing all the way down around you. The potential and the possibility and the opportunity is there. It has not abandoned you. And you are growing through this. And this is exactly why I want to start talking about this stuff in my content, because I have been where you are. I have felt those terrifying, terrifying feelings, especially if you have any kind of dependence in your household. I just feel for you, okay? And this is exactly why we're going to start talking about this stuff, because I've been through this and I've learned and grown and educated myself through this. And I'm going to continue educating and seeking mentorship for myself. I'm going to continue growing through this right there alongside with you, because make no mistake, your girl is not swimming in it. We're breathing. For the first time in years, we're breathing. And I speak my fucking appreciation for that every single day to the cosmos. But there is lots of room for growth over here. So I am learning and growing right alongside with you, my friend. And we are going to grow through this together. And we in this neighborhood, all of everybody, we are going to be this little army of people that are self-sustainable and self-accountable, and we're authentic in our beliefs and our lifestyle, okay? And that is how we bridge this gap. That is real magic for real life. That is how we bring magic and witchcraft and energetics into these what feel like scary and mundane and icky and maybe even just downright boring earthly realms like money and finances. So, where did the real shift happen for me? Hey, neighbor. I want to take a moment to thank our episode sponsor for today, the Goddess Provisions monthly subscription box. Receiving this monthly box of magic has become such a favorite and sacred form of my self-care every single month, and I can't even forget to do it because it gets delivered right to my door. Every box is a specially curated theme, and all of the items regularly retail over $100 consistently. Plus, you're helping to support and find more small business and makers as well. You can get your box for just $33 a month plus free shipping in the US. Get yours today and support That Witch podcast by using the link in our show notes below. I thought about this while I was preparing for the episode, okay? I've gone through the timeline now a couple of times, especially since I recorded with Jared. I've gone through the timeline now a couple of times. So I made myself ask, where in the timeline did the shift happen and why? And here's the real answer. I discovered value. And maybe a more accurate way of saying that is I rediscovered value. Because I think that when we're kids, especially really little kids, I think we're a lot closer to and aligned with that concept than we realize. I think kids are way closer aligned to that. Now, sometimes they're crazy people about material possessions and stuff. And they definitely don't understand the concept of money and stuff. I'm not saying that. And I only laugh because I have a 4-year-old who, we're at the stage right now of starting to teach these different things and like why we don't just buy anything the fuck we want at a store. And we're really trying to like teach and instill the concept of value. And I want her to develop that for herself. That's what's interesting about teaching it to her. I really don't want to teach her what is and is not valuable. Instead, what I'm trying to teach her and what we're all going to try and learn together is how do we each uniquely determine value for ourselves? That is way more useful. Because value is still a pretty arbitrary, subjective concept, okay? And just a little like astro tip, I personally find that one of the best places in your chart to get started learning about your values is your Venus placement. I think that because this is this planet associated with love and connection, but this is an Earth planet, we really can uncover and discover and connect with our deepest, truest personal values when we go through our Venus placement. So I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there. But this is really, when I look at like the hard times or like the dark times, the dark ages for my financial experience and history versus what things look like now, which is, again, breathing. It's from discovering value. Before I discovered and therefore anchored into my values, my emotional spending took me over. I could lie to myself all day long that something was a self-care purchase, that conversation you have with yourself that feels a lot more like one side of yourself trying to convince yourself than an actual conversation. I would do that a lot. That was something that was happening a lot, like every day. And I was spending, I'm going to just be real with you, hundreds of dollars every week. This is now in my late 20s. This was right before and right after I had my first credit card. This was my whole experience with my first credit card. I did not have my emotional spending patterns. I didn't have any awareness of it at all. And so it was out of control without me even realizing it. And on top of that, I have ADHD, which means I very realistically struggle with impulse control. And because I have a lack of dopamine, it's very easy and common for anyone with ADHD or neurotransmitter deficiency to get caught in any kind of cycle of addiction, including spending, because we get a little hit and boost of dopamine or serotonin or whatever when we make ourselves really happy with a purchase or an impulse in that moment. And so it was out of control. I'm not even aware of it, let alone it being actually out of control. And I'm not getting anything out of the money I'm spending. That's when I had to get honest with myself. And that's what I'm really hoping my words today can do for some of you, is help you get honest with yourself. Is the money that you're spending and the things that you're buying doing anything for you? Or is it seriously just providing a temporary dopamine release in the moment? Because you would be so crazy shocked by how many of our purchases are only that. Now, I'm no Dave Ramsey. I followed Dave Ramsey's work for I don't know. I was always glad that it didn't last very long because it didn't resonate very well. But of course, like anybody else that tries to learn, self-start or finances, I came across Dave Ramsey years and years ago. And like many of you that have also done this, what did I leave with after working through some of Dave Ramsey's articles? Guilt. A lot of guilt. Guilt of just existing and being a person who even would have the fucking audacity to spend money on not a necessary crumb of food or drop of water or a bit of heat in the vents. Dave Ramsey is part of a greater culture that has put, I realize why it birthed, okay? Like before you go chopping off Dave Ramsey's head, I want you to understand why and how that birthed in the first place, which is our terrifyingly disgusting consumerism problem in our society. Like you gotta at least understand that an equal and opposite problem or solution to the problem is, or supposedly solution to the problem, is going to pop up. More accurately, it's an equal and opposite reflection of what's currently existing. And in this case, it's our absolutely abhorrent consumerism problem in our society, particularly America, because I live here and I know it, so I can speak really strongly on that on our behalf. But in Western society, I'm pretty confident saying in most of the industrialized world, consumerism is a pretty fucking extreme problem. And the thing of it is that we have to find some happy place between this totally mindless emotional spending cycles and Dave Ramsey mindset. I'm the worst person. I'll never buy myself. I'll never buy myself anything ever again. And that's how I'll save myself. You know what sucks? The reason he made so much money too is because when you get to as desperate of a place as you can get to, and you're online and you're looking for any fucking solution, and you come across a person and a philosophy like Dave Ramsey, you're in such a vulnerable, shitty, weak, insecure place and energy space for yourself that you're like, you're right, I'm a piece of shit. I should never have done that. I'll never do it again. It's so interesting because honestly, I can parallel so much of this to my relationship with drugs and alcohol. So even if you've never struggled with any kind of substance abuse, this is still very common kind of addiction-like cycle where it's such an emotion-based cycle. And because you're kind of in the eye of the storm, it's so hard to get perspective on it for yourself. But let me offer you some. Even if you're in a really shitty, tough financial spot right now, and you buy some stuff for yourself, for joy or leisure or whatever, you are not a piece of shit human being, okay? I just want to be, possibly it might be the first person to tell you that. So if I am, there you go. You are not a piece of shit for buying some things for enjoyment sometimes. I want you to really know how ridiculous it is that we do have to pay the amount of money that we do to exist on the planet we're born onto. It's ridiculous the way that our society and our world is set up to put us into debt to exist on a place where, we got born here. So keep in mind that no, nothing's wrong with you for wanting to utilize the system around you to also still enjoy this life that you're in and a part of. Like, enjoying your life is part of your own responsibilities. So you have every right to utilize your earnings and your livelihood and money to enjoy this life. Okay. Do not forget that part. But we do all struggle with money blockages. And the real root for each of us is to get into our money shadow work. So I mentioned during our That Witch School little update at the beginning of the episode that I'm going to do a bonus episode this week. I'm dropping a bonus episode on money shadow work, and I don't have time to go into it too in depth on our episode today, but I want you to take the concept of shadow work and everything you've learned about that concept and apply it to your financial wounds. So to put it very simply, but this would still be very effective, you want to give yourself time and space to first identify what those wounds are. You're going to have to talk with your inner child. You're going to have to talk with your inner teenager. You're going to have to talk with your inner adolescent, okay? And you're going to have to go back and look at how money was treated and exemplified around you, not just by your parents, but by lots of people around you, okay? Because it all impacts our perspective and how it developed over the years. And I want you to be honest with yourself in a compassionate and understanding way when it comes to any of your current spending habits. It's not about saying, oh, my shitty spending habits. You don't need to put that judgment on it. In fact, it kind of negates the point of shadow work. Take the judgment part away and just state the facts. What are the spending cycles and habits and patterns that you have? What does emotional spending look like for you? It looks different for everybody. Some people go into a total freeze and refuse to spend a cent on absolutely anything, including the necessities. That's an emotional spending cycle that needs to be addressed in your shadow work. And on the flip side, obviously, very similar to the story I told you, there's binge spending that's coming from an emotional place. So it's up to you to uncover and illuminate these shadows and these projections within yourself so that as you bring awareness to them, you can catch yourself and go, oh, do I want this right now? You know, I'm not even saying, do I need this? I hate that question. No, tons of times we don't technically need. If we're asking in the first place, no, we usually don't need it. But you know what's almost as helpful of a question? Do I even want this? Does future me even want this? I get it, me right now. I feel you, impulse in the moment. I know we really want it right now. But do we really want it, like on that subterranean level? Does our higher self want this thing? Remember what I said in Moon Day yesterday, the quote from the Hood Witch? Higher self is just a fancy way of saying the part of you that knows the fuck better. So in that moment, that voice of yours, your higher self never talks to you in a rude way. So if that's the voice that's coming through, that's an insecurity or a shadow or a projection. It's not your higher self. Your higher self will be much more understanding and much more straightforward with you. And I promise you, this is one of the biggest, most helpful yet simple steps to creating an intentional and mindful spending pattern. That's really where we're trying to get to, okay? So a lot of people, and I'm very much a part of this, a lot of people, we go through the hard times, we experience the money blockages and all of the financial trauma, we get to a terrifying place, we start researching, find the crazy people like Dave Ramsey, and we get a budget. How many of you have done this? Raise your hand, class. How many of us have fear started a budget? You download an Excel template or a Google Doc template, or you buy some one, right? From somebody that you learned about or that you've been following a podcast of. They might even actually be a legit and really good financial coach, but you bought their budget and it's been sitting in your inbox. You haven't done anything with it. Maybe you plugged in numbers for a month or two, maybe a week or two, and now it's been sitting there collecting digital dust. This is so common. You are so not alone. I have done this so many times. Shout out to my client, Kelsey. I love you. We just had your session and we were both totally just talking about all of this. And I was so inspired. I was already planning this episode, and then she and I talked all about this in our session. I was like, man, now I'm just so energized and so inspired to do this episode for everybody. But we all go through it. I need you to know you are not alone. We all are like, I'm going to get that financial planner at the store. I'm going to get that handy dandy budget template. And then it collects digital or literal dust and nothing happens. Why? Why does this happen? Because a budget will not work if you don't set yourself up for one. When I was preparing for this episode and all of our bonus content this week, this phrase would not leave me. So you're going to see it a lot in your content this week. But it would not leave me. A budget will never work if you don't set yourself up for one. I realized why finally, like, fear hopping into a budget template wasn't doing anything, why I wasn't magically transforming and organizing my finances, because I hadn't worked on my money mindset at all, because I hadn't done any money shadow work or healing at all. First of all, do you know what the one guarantee? Do you want to know what the number one guarantee way to never run out of money is? Everybody can do it. Everybody. It's extremely difficult, depending on each person to person situation. So it's definitely not a solution. But technically, the first step and the only thing that you technically have to do to never run out of money is to spend less than you make. Correct? However much you bring in every month, you got to spend less. Fine and dandy. Sounds great. Sunshine and rainbows. However, what about the people that have a full-blown anxiety and panic attack, even looking at the little icon of their bank app on their phone, let alone actually opening it up? How on earth can you expect to actually track and make sure that you're spending less than you make, to make sure that you have security, if you can't even look at your numbers? This is why the money mindset and the money shadow work and addressing and illuminating and healing those financial wounds is a non-negotiable. It has to be the first step. From that shadow work, you discover and uncover, and then you anchor into your values and your concept of value. Armed with those alone, it'll take you pretty dang far, my friend. It'll take you pretty dang far. I can just about guarantee that. Your growth will be a little bit slower, but it will be consistent and it will happen. If you do your money mindset work, in your shadow work, you anchor into your values, and you actually give a fuck in every moment of every purchase. Do I even actually want this? What's the value this is bringing to my life? That alone gonna set you up pretty well. But if we wanted to take it further and we really did want to set ourselves up for a budget, what should we do? This is where that foundational checklist comes into play that I mentioned at the very beginning of the episode for That Witch School students. I created a financial foundation checklist. It's not a budget template. You will not find a budget template in there. You know why? I'm not a financial advisor. However, I am a mentor of utilizing energetics and mindset work in our lifestyle in any area of our life. And finances are definitely part of that. So this checklist really goes through a lot of what we went through today, but gives you in order, step by step, the things that you need to do and start working on before you even open up whatever the budget is. And that's kind of where the checklist ends, is guiding you into how you can find a budget template or how to create a budget template that works for you. But you have to be able to look at how much money you make and how much you're spending. All of it. All of it. You have to look inside your account at the numbers, not just the summary or whatever. You have to look at your statement, look what you're spending, look what you paid off on your debt. Like, you have to do all of that stuff. And if that makes you feel scared, if that's terrifying to you, that's why we have to address that first. So I want to give a shout out to another podcast that was recently brought to my attention during all of this. I have heard of her before, from a couple of you before, actually. But my client, Kelsey, that I brought up, she had mentioned to me the Financial Feminist, and she created the brand Her First 100K. So many of you may have already heard of her. She's a pretty big name, but her podcast is the Financial Feminist. And she has this great episode on using your finances for self-care and really combating those fears and insecurities around looking at your finances. So I will definitely make sure that we link her episode so that you can all go listen to that. It's quick, powerful hitter. And then maybe you'll just end up liking her and listening to a lot of her episodes anyways, but really helpful, practical, accessible, and useful information in her content. I was really grateful that my client turned me on to that. And I felt so validated because I had started preparing for this episode. I felt so validated listening to her talk because I was like, exactly, this is exactly what I'm talking about. There is no creating a budget if you can't look at the numbers in the first place, but you gotta. And if you absolutely can't, then we gotta figure out why. You gotta address those wounds. There is no looking away and the problem magically goes away and your wealth starts building and all the money problems flutter away. That's straight up not happening, my friend. I know that this is an uncomfortable experience. I've been through it. I'm going through it in my own way. Again, we're breathing, but I am still very much learning. There is still a lot of growth happening here. And this is why it's so important that we're all honest and transparent about this, and we actually do something about it. We don't just get on these spiritual podcasts and spiritual accounts and just talk about astrology and witchcraft, and we never talk about how we actually utilize these mindsets to benefit our lives. So I really hope that this episode has provided you with inspiration. I hope I'm not leaving you in a puddle of fear. I know that this stuff is hard. I totally and completely relate to that state of financial freeze from that amount of financial stress. I really do. I hope that this gives you some hope, some inspiration and motivation that these things are not as scary and not as difficult as you might think or may have even been led to believe that they are. Getting yourself set up for a really strong mindset to create a budget that will actually work for you, that you will actually stick to, that is the first step. And it is such a powerful step of longevity that will carry you for years and years. And I promise you, if you embark on this journey, just like I did, I promise, I sat myself down and I walked myself through, how did I get myself from this financial mindset to the one I'm currently in? And I wrote it out and created an episode for it. And that's what this whole episode has been. I promise you that if you embark on this journey and you have the courage to just face these financial fears and face these financial traumas and start doing your money shadow work and start anchoring into your values and actually start implementing intentional mindful spending, I guarantee you will be in such a different spot this time next year. In 1 year alone, I guarantee it'll be so different. And like I said, this is not going to be even close to the last time we have this conversation. Capricorn season is upon us, my friends. So it's a really important discussion. I hope that even though on the surface finances might seem really boring, I hope that you're just as jazzed as I am about all this, because we're going the fuck into this year, 2023, and we're getting our shit together. And I want to walk into 2023 feeling like I have my shit together. I know shit is chaotic around me all the time. That's okay. That's not what it means to have my shit together. To have my shit together means I know that I'm prepared to respond to anything that comes my way, because I live mindfulness, authenticity. I live by these intentions. All right. I know how much so many of you relate to this message, because you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you weren't somebody who felt that way. So I really, really hope this was helpful. Hope you learned something. Hope you feel inspired by today. I really, really appreciate your time today. Don't forget, if you're into all of this and you're excited to keep having this conversation and you're not already in that witch school, it's just starts at $5 a month, and you get that bonus episode and that financial foundation checklist this week. So make sure you check us out. Join us for instant access. Thank you so, so much for your time today and every day. I am so grateful for every last one of you. Make sure you stay safe this week, have fun, and stay magical out there. Hi, neighbor. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of That Witch Podcast. If you want to support the show and get your hands on some really magical goodies, make sure you check out some of the awesome companies that I'm an affiliate for in the show notes below. You can also leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes as well as Spotify now. And really the best way to support That Witch Podcast is just by sharing the show online, like your social media platforms, or telling a friend that you think would enjoy it. If you're looking for more magical content like bonus episodes, classes I teach, and support in your witchcraft, make sure you come check us out in That Witch School, my magical monthly membership with a very welcoming private online community. And don't forget to subscribe to my email list for weekly astro forecasts, journal prompts, and more, and stay up to date with all of the happenings here in the neighborhood.